UFC 11.5, also known as Ultimate 96, was one of the most anticipated events in the history of mixed martial arts at the time. The tournament took place on December 7, 1996 at the Fair Park Arena in Birmingham, Alabama. It was the second Ultimate tournament, which brought together the best winners and finalists from previous UFC tournaments. Expectations for the tournament were high, as it featured star fighters Ken Shamrock, Don Frye, Gary Goodridge, and Tank Abbott. Ken Shamrock, a UFC Hall of Fame inductee, had his last fight at this tournament before moving to the World Wrestling Federation. It was also Don Frye's last fight in the UFC before transitioning to professional wrestling, as he soon signed a contract with New Japan Pro Wrestling. For these two stars, this was their final bout in the UFC, making the tournament even more anticipated. UFC 11.5 left a significant mark in the history of mixed martial arts and is still discussed among fans and experts today. Let's enjoy this unforgettable spectacle. The referee for the tournament was the famous John McCarthy, who officiated all the early UFC tournaments. In the first quarter-final bout, Ken Shamrock faced Brian Johnston. Ken Shamrock, known as the world's most dangerous man, is one of the pioneers of the UFC. His career in the UFC has been marked by numerous significant events, including fights against legends like Royce Gracie and Dan Severn. Shamrock became the first UFC heavyweight champion and earned the title of King of Pancrase in Japan, making him the first foreign champion in the history of the Japanese MMA. His fighting style, combining elements of shoot fighting and wrestling, along with his ability to dominate opponents, has made him one of the most recognizable fighters in the world. Outside the octagon, Shamrock also gained fame for his career in professional wrestling, performing in promotions such as the WWF and TNA. Brian Johnston is less known to the general public. In this fight, he showcased his skills and determination. Johnston, known for his strength and wrestling technique, faced one of the most experienced and respected fighters in Shamrock. In the first seconds of the fight, Shamrock shot for a takedown in response to his opponent's feint, bringing the fight to the ground, where he methodically began to pound on Brian. Brian tried to defend himself by grabbing Ken's arms, but many punches still got through. Realizing he couldn't escape the trap, an exhausted Brian submitted. In the next fight, Gary Goodridge, known by the nickname Big Daddy, faced Don Frye. Gary Goodridge, a former heavyweight boxer, was born in Trinidad and Tobago and moved to Canada. Goodridge made his UFC debut at UFC 8. He is known for his powerful striking technique and ability to finish fights with knockouts. He fights in a black gi, which is rare in such competitions where fighters try to minimize the risk of being grabbed by their clothing. Don Frye, also known as the Predator, is an American mixed martial artist, professional wrestler, and actor. He was one of the first fighters in MMA history and won the UFC 8 tournament, as well as taking second place at UFC 10. Frye was distinguished by his wrestling skills and powerful strikes, as well as his ability to achieve quick victories through submission. After a sluggish exchange of punches, the fight quickly transitions into a clinch, where the fighters continue trading blows. They separate for a few seconds and then clinch again. Suddenly, Goodridge manages to take Frye down to the ground, and in the ground position, Goodridge finds himself in an advantageous spot and begins attacking his opponent, including using headbutts. Frye tightly presses himself against Goodridge, trying to minimize the damage from the strikes. With great difficulty, Frye manages to change the situation. First, he slips out from under his opponent and gets to his knees. Perhaps this tactic might have worked with someone else, but not with Frye. He grabs Goodridge's knee, takes him down to his back, and ends up on top of his opponent. Realizing the hopelessness of his situation, Goodridge submits, as he has already exhausted all his strength and cannot defend himself in such a clearly losing position. In the next bout, Tank Abbott faced off against Cal Worsham. Tank Abbott, whose real name is David Lee Abbott, is one of the most recognizable names in early UFC history. He is known for his aggressive fighting style and powerful punches, which earn him a reputation as one of the toughest fighters. Interestingly, Abbott is not a professional fighter. Although he participated in boxing and wrestling in high school and college, he never achieved significant success. He entered professional MMA at the age of 30. In the UFC, he relied not so much on his athletic skills, but on his experience from street fighting in bars and on the streets of Huntington Beach, California. Fighters like Abbott are no longer seen in the UFC today. In other words, Abbott is that big dock worker from the bar you wouldn't want to mess with after a pint of beer, and his fighting style reflected that. Tank Abbott is considered a pioneer of the UFC style known as pit fighting. This is one of the most spectacular styles of early UFC, characterized by its aggressive approach and straightforwardness. Pit fighters prefer to fight standing up, relying on powerful punches and aiming for an early knockout. He was the clear favorite in this fight. Abbott immediately took the initiative. With powerful punches, he drove Worsham to the cage, then executed a move known as a fire extinguisher. Worsham avoided a heavy fall by grabbing the cage, but quickly found himself on the ground. After a brief struggle, Abbott stood up, offering his opponent a chance to get back on his feet. However, Worsham didn't rush to stand up. Seeing that his opponent did not support his initiative to continue the fight standing up, Abbott re-entered the ground game, quickly finishing the fight with a series of powerful punches. The referee stopped the match due to Abbott's clear advantage and Worsham's passive fighting style, which included avoiding engagement. Although Worsham was clearly dissatisfied with his decision, as soon as the referee stopped the match, he jumped up and rushed towards Tank. Luckily, McCarthy held him back from making such a rash move. It became apparent that after Abbott's punch, Worsham had removed his hand from his face and touched the ground. The referee perceived this gesture as a submission, although Worsham tried to argue otherwise just a second later. In the next bout, Kimo faced off against Paul Varelans. Kimo Leopoldo, known simply as Kimo, is one of the most colorful figures in mixed martial arts history. Born in Germany and raised in Hawaii, Kimo began his MMA career at UFC 3 in 1994, where he lost to Royce Gracie. Kimo fought from 1994 to 2011 and also competed in Pride Fighting Championships, Cage Rage, and World Fighting Alliance. Before starting his UFC career, he earned a black belt in Taekwondo. His opponent, Paul Varelans, known as the Polar Bear, is an American professional mixed martial artist. From the first seconds of the fight, Kimo firmly grabbed his opponent's leg. However, he couldn't execute the move successfully, as Varelans defended well, and the fight returned to a standing position. Kimo latched onto his opponent like a fighting dog. He attempted a leg trip to topple his opponent, back to the clinch in a standing position. All the while, Varelans was pummeling Kimo. It must be tough to stay under a constant barrage of punches from this giant. Another failed takedown attempt by Kimo. Another hail of heavy blows from the Polar Bear. Finally, Kimo managed to slip out from under his opponent and pinned him against the cage. Now he was finishing off the Polar Bear. His strikes were more effective. The opponent's corner threw in a towel into the ring, symbolizing the end of the fight. In the first semifinal, Tank Abbott faced Steve Nelmark. Nelmark was an alternate fighter who didn't participate in the quarterfinals. The fight between these two became one of the most spectacular in UFC history. In the first few seconds, Tank knocked his opponent back with a powerful punch to the fence, and moments later, threw him to the ground with a move known as a fireman's carry. However, he found himself in a guillotine choke. But Tank Abbott isn't one to give up. He managed to stand up, break free from the hold, and launch a series of wild, powerful punches at Steve. He then pressed him against the cage and landed a short right hook to the jaw. Nealmark's legs buckled and he fell into an unnatural position, resembling a yoga asana under the octagon fence. This knockout stunned everyone. It became so iconic that it was named Nealmarking. Thus, Steve Nealmark entered UFC history, albeit not in the way he had hoped. In the second semifinal of the tournament, Mark Hall faced Don Frye. Mark Hall did not participate in the quarterfinals, but entered the semifinals as an alternate fighter, replacing Ken Shamrock, who was injured and could not continue the competition. This gave Hall the opportunity to fight Frye despite not competing in the previous round. This was a very short fight, lasting only 20 seconds. In the opening seconds, Frye used a classic wrestling hold to take his opponent down to the mat. Hall attempted to defend with his legs, but in doing so, he gave his right leg to Frye. Frye quickly executed an Achilles lock and won the match. Later, rumors circulated that this fight might have been fixed. It was speculated that Mark intentionally surrendered quickly so Frye could conserve energy for his fight with Abbott. Whether this is true or not, we may never know for sure. In the tournament final, Frye faced Abbott. In the opening seconds of the fight, Abbott landed a powerful punch, knocking Frye against the fence and rushing in to finish him off. Frye manages to get back on his feet and create distance. Abbott continues to apply pressure. Frye tries to defend himself, but he clearly loses in the striking exchanges at medium range. However, Abbott's powerful swinging strikes backfire on him. During one of these strikes, he loses balance and falls. Frye quickly gets behind him, wraps his legs around Abbott, and secures a rear naked choke. Abbott taps out. As you can see, in this tournament, grappling technique triumphs over striking. UFC 11.5, also known as Ultimate 1996, made its mark in the history of mixed martial arts. Bringing together veterans and stars, it delighted fans with a series of thrilling matchups, showcasing the strength, endurance, and skill of the fighters. The final bout between Don Frye and Tank Abbott was the highlight of the evening, highlighting Frye's ability to adapt and win under the most challenging conditions. Despite controversies and accusations of fixed fights, Ultimate 1996 remains one of the most memorable and significant events in the early history of the UFC, contributing greatly to the sport's further popularity. If you enjoyed this tournament and want to see more videos like this, please give it a thumbs up, leave your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We'll see you in the next video.